The archive up on the top floor of the BMI at lunch or after this year in general. We're continuing donations of materials from the Communication Workers Union, full bound archive of Daily Workers and Morning Stars, two of which are popping up the projector at the back, so they've all already come in useful. VJ Day, the 80th anniversary of the victory over Japan in the East. And we're going to use this opportunity to hear the recollections of Don Grant, who is sat here at the front. And he was interned by the Japanese in China in the 1930s.
It always catches my eye when I come here, and I like coming here. And the whole point, Pete said, when I was on the train, he said, do you want to do it a few minutes? Well, actually, don't know an awful lot about it, that's why I'm coming here. So I'm really looking forward to the speakers that we got today and the presentations that we got today, and hopefully some input from you guys. As veterans, you kind of go and do your job. I've always found myself being an economic, and you could say that about obviously all the millions that lost their lives in the wars. Particularly interesting
near the London area, and he must have seen an advert that was put in by people who were like, they were similar to Crown agents, Pook and Sons, for a position as a police in Shanghai. That was in 1910, and that's when he first went out there. Now, I don't know whether you know about it. Shanghai was actually, or at least the municipal council was actually an amalgamation of, they call themselves the International. We got to England, they wanted to pay us a bill, pay the bill. Mind you, that was only for the British billeted in there for quite a time. And the next door was another army camp and another Japanese hospital on the side. And by the hospital there was an anti-aircraft gun. We came into these buildings. Now, when the Japanese left, they took everything with them, took all the pipe work, everything. So there was no water, no nothing. No, the distance between the two buildings would be less than the width of this hall. And in that width, there were the latrines. There were the end of a hole to drop into the pit below. And they were emptied by hand. There were very little.
Of the start of the Nanjing massacre, and today is also the 12th National Memorial Day in China for the victims of the Nanjing massacre. In a long period of World War that was punctuated throughout by terrible atrocities, the Nanjing massacre stands out as one of the individually worst examples. Approximately 300,000 people. To go back to what I prepared, on May the 8th, 1945, people in Britain celebrated VE Day, as 6 years of all-out war in Europe against Nazi and fascist tyranny had come to a victorious conclusion. But whilst the nation struggled with a collective hangover the next day, Soviet and Japanese forces in or adjacent to Mongolia, the stakes would be high. A decisive Soviet defeat would likely prompt a full-scale Japanese invasion of the Soviet Union, with the equal likelihood that this would prompt further attack on the Soviet Union from the West, whereas a decisive Soviet victory would contain the Japanese threat for a considerable period and allow the Soviet Union relative freedom to devote its attentions to preparing to meet an attack from the West. That major confrontation was to take place from May to September 1939, known as the Battle of Khalkhin Gol, after a member of the Lisbon-Muru Association here who is obviously going to eclipse with first-hand experience anything that I have to say on this matter. But again, the story of the Lisbon-Muru is almost unknown in Britain. But it was President Xi Jinping who replied personally to Mrs. Denise Wynne, an ordinary English lady, who happens to be the daughter of Dennis Morley, who became the last of the Lisbon-Muru survivors, after she wrote to him conveying her late father's wish that a memorial be erected in China to honour the fishermen who had risked their lives to rescue him and his comrades. I could quote a lot about this from the website of the Chinese embassy or from the Chinese media, but instead I'll quote an article from the BBC. History, but also honours the enduring friendship between Chinese and British peoples. The film we're about to see is a documentary and it speaks for itself. It's focused on telling the British story. There's also a feature film, Dongji Rescue, which tells the story more from the vantage point of the Chinese fishing community. And yes, those Chinese fishermen were motivated to risk everything because they knew that these were people who were helping them to fight the Japanese. There was something else too, in my view. It's also a story about how communities, who for generations have earned their living from the sea, also know how capricious and cruel that sea can be at times. What it can mean for families to wait to see if a boat will return from a storm. And therefore, if someone is at peril at sea, it's your duty to do whatever you can to try to save them, no matter who they are or where they come from. The Chinese fishermen that wouldn't have been able to find Britain on a map or a globe. They just knew that these were people that needed their help. So it's a story of the basic solidarity and compassion that makes us human. This can be an emotionally heart-rending film. It doesn't pull any punches, but still, I would say that it should be enjoyed as an inspiration to never stop fighting for peace against war and for lasting friendship among peoples. Thank you again.
Way of placing this film in its context. And now, please welcome to the lectern Philip Harris of the Lisbon-Muru Association. Thanks.
I would start by saying I'm not a professional speaker. This is not a lecture. No, actually, like you mentioned, the film speaks for itself, so I'm not going to say much about the film. My connection is that my father-in-law, and actually my wife would like to have been here, but she's got a children's party to do, so she sent me. And she does actually appear at the end of the film. When the credits go up, there's families on the left-hand side going up. And we saw it in London. And I saw her and her sister being she was reading the credits on that side, and she never saw it. I said, you looked all right. She said, why? Anyway, my father-in-law, born in 1914, eldest of 8 children. His father had been in the regular army, he'd been in the Boer War, which sounds like a long time ago, but his father was in the Boer War, and then the First World War. And I think he filled his son with stories of army life in foreign parts and everything. So he joined the army as soon as he could. He wanted to follow his father into the Royal Marines. And he went to the recruitment, but he was half an inch too short. And that half inch changed his life, really. If he'd had an extra half an inch, he'd have been in the Royal Marines and there'd been a different story. Little things change lives all the time. You know, you don't know what's happened. You go out one day and you decide not to, and then you get run over. But anyway, that's beside the point. So he joined the Royal Artillery, and in 1937 he was posted to Hong Kong. He rose actually quite rapidly through the ranks, and by 1941 he was a sergeant. And he operated his field gun against the Japanese on the approaching road. So I think he could give a good account of himself. Anyway, Hong Kong fell Christmas Day, and that was it. And the prison camp in Hong Kong was particularly bad. You know, it was a concentration camp without any chimneys, really. One of his friends had married a local girl, one of his fellow, he was in the Royal Scots, this other chap. Anyway, he married a local girl, and she tried to smuggle him a bit of extra food. You think it was an apple he was going to slip to him, and it was spotted, and she was executed for the crime in front of him, chopped her head off. All the soldiers lined up, and that was it. So it wasn't a very nice place to be. Anyway, then they decided that they were going to transport him to Japan to work already. They were an asset. So they wanted 2,000. So the doctor went through the camp and selected ones to go. And the ones that were selected were given an injection. Nobody knows what the injection was for. They were given a great big injection. And anyway, Cyril being in the artillery, he was consigned to the 3rd hold. And the 3rd hold on the ship was the worst one to be in. About 80% of those who started in the 3rd hold died. Yeah, when the torpedo struck, so the 3rd hold was towards the back where the engine room and the torpedo struck. It started taking on water, and the prisoners were given a pump. And it was one of these.